Just, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna wait. I think I'm safe. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well today. Any Irish people in the house? Anyone? Yeah. Well, top of the morning to y'all. Happy St. Patty's Day, eh? Well, if you're just joining us this week, we have been looking through the Gospel of Matthew. It's one of the four accounts that we have of Jesus' life found in the Bible, each written by real individuals, each written to a real audience, each with slightly different needs, but all with one purpose, and that is that all of the people that have written about the accounts of Jesus write with the intent and the purpose and the goal that we would encounter the teachings and the life and the message of Jesus, our Christ, and our Savior. And so as we've been looking through the Gospel of Matthew, page after page, we've been looking at his teachings, his life, what he's about, and what he is setting up for us, and what he's asking us to do, and what he's asking us to trust. And our hope as a church, our hope as Moraine Valley Church, is that we don't just read these pages, but that we would actually get to know at a deeper level Jesus Christ. That we would learn what it means to call ourselves his followers. And that we would follow with greater trust and greater boldness in this world, in this day and age, in our time, here and now. And last week, we reached this pivotal point in the gospel, Matthew 16. And we learned that there's this aspect where Matthew is setting up the stage for this everything else to play out, to unfold for us really fast. We talked about how it's kind of like that point in a movie where you realize all the plot has been set, the characters are set, everything is ready, and now you're going to watch all the chips fall into play, and it's going to move really, really fast. Last week we looked at how Jesus is building his church, and that even the gates of hell will not withstand or prevail against his movement. And we looked at how God gives us a new name, how God gives us a new purpose, and how God commissions us to be a part of that movement. And we decided last week with pins that we wanted to go home and make our homes, our places of work, places where people's lives who have hurt us or challenged us, or friends or families' lives, we put pins where those places are, and we said that this is the place, God, that we want to see your church built. This is the place that we want to see your hope and your message prevail. This is the place that we want to see eventually proclaim that Jesus is the Christ. And for many of us, we reaffirmed what we're a part of as a church. And this morning, we're reaching the second half of that same scene of the disciples. If you like to hold your Bibles in front of you, there's Bibles in front of you in the chairs, underneath your chairs. It'll also be on the screen, and I believe it's also in the bulletin as well. But we're in Matthew 16, and I encourage you just to hold it open as we read. As your mind wanders while we talk and while we share, it's capable of sort of be thinking multiple things at one time, isn't it? It's capable to listen to one person and be thinking about something else. My hope this morning is that as I'm talking, as we're all listening, that this isn't just an engagement of someone listening to someone on a stage, but that we're really listening for God to speak to us. How many of you guys have ever done a connect the dots before? Anyone ever did connect the dots before? Yeah, they're kind of fun. You kind of see this picture, you're not really sure what it is, but there's all these dots, all these connection points, and as you draw a line to line to line to line, a picture begins to emerge. And one of the things that we encourage our high school students, when we're listening to a message, when we're reading God's word, is to listen for the dots that God punctuates in the morning, or God punctuates with his Spirit through a message, or through his word. As there's sort of an aha, or as there's a moment where you're looking at God's words on his page and you think, this place right here, this is something that stands out. Make note of that. And as the message progresses, start to connect the dots and ask yourself, God, what picture are you painting for me this morning? What picture are you asking me to respond to this morning? And so as you look through the words, I pray that takes place. We're coming to a familiar text for many of us this morning. And before I go any further this morning, I'd like to say it's a difficult word. I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience before, but as someone who follows Jesus, I love hearing about the Jesus who serves. I love hearing about the Jesus who proclaims his kingdom. I love hearing about the Jesus who heals and comforts and cares for us. But if I'm honest, there are some teachings of Jesus that are really difficult. There are some teachings that Jesus has that come from his lips that sometimes I have a hard time grappling with because they confront me. They don't just fit into my world, and they ask something of me, and they move and they stir and sometimes make me uneasy. And if I'm honest, some of those teachings I don't always want to do. I don't always want to follow. And I don't know, I just don't want to go where those things are. And while he comes for all of us, Jesus sets the bar high. If there's one thing we learn about Jesus, is that Jesus does not compromise his standards. He does not compromise who he is, and he does not compromise his call on his life, on our lives, because the stakes are just too high. For Jesus, the stakes are too high. Jesus cares about us, he cares about this world, and he loves us too much to set the bar any lower. But the good news is by God's Spirit, he enables us to reach the bar that he set. Because the bar that Jesus set is an impossible bar. We can make no mistake about that. But the good news is because of the cross, because of Jesus' death and resurrection, Jesus comes in us and dwells in us by the power of his Holy Spirit and makes it possible for us to attain that bar. But in the midst of that, sometimes we hear these hard teachings, and it's difficult. And so I want us to keep in mind, there's a passage in John just in the book of John, where Jesus is teaching to a multitude. And he's giving a really hard teaching, a really hard word. And as he's giving this teaching, one by one, people begin to leave him. So much so that it says that everyone had left him, except his 12. And after this really difficult teaching that was hard for people to stomach, he turns to his 12 and he says, where did everybody go? Aren't you going to leave too? And Peter speaks up, as he often does, and he says, Jesus, where can we go? Because you have the words of eternal life. And I think those words are kind of profound, because sometimes I find myself saying, I don't know if I like this teaching, I don't know if I want this teaching, but at the same time, I don't know where else to turn, Jesus, because you have the words of eternal life. And so as we gather, I want to pray for us. I want to pray for us that as we look at a familiar passage, that God brings new things to us, and that God would do his work in us in such a way that we would leave being enabled, empowered to live out the standard and the bar that he set for us. So let's pray. Jesus, God, I pray that you would enable us this morning to hear your word in fresh ways. God, as we reach the end of ourselves, I pray that you'd speak to us. For those of us that have come with burdens or distractions or a heavy load, God, I pray that you would minister to us this morning, that we would hear your call in our lives. For those of us that seem like we're inundated with a list of burdens that are too high to surmount, Jesus, I pray that you would show yourself to be an overcoming Savior, and that through you we overcome for greater things. And God, I pray that you would open our mind and our hearts to your word this morning, that it wouldn't be an exercise of communication, that it wouldn't be an exercise of listening, but it would be a moment, a holy moment with a real God who is present with us here and now. And we pray this in your Son's amazing and awesome and overcoming and enabling name. Amen. Well, ice cube. Didn't see that one coming. Amen. Ice cube. All right, here we are. Well, we are in Matthew 16, verses 21 through 28. Jesus had just asked his disciples, who do you say that I am? And Peter came to the conclusion, you are the Christ. You are the Son of the living God. You are the one we've been waiting for. You are the one who's been promised. And just after that, Jesus gives this great commission to Peter and his disciples and says, I'm going to build my church, and even the gates of Hades are not going to withstand it. And then right from that time, after Jesus has this moment with Peter and the disciples, this is what happens. You follow along with me in verse 21. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. For you are a hindrance to me. You are not setting your mind on the things of God, but the things of man. And then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with all his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. And truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Our passage starts right off the gate with what seems to be a tragic twist in our story. I mean, put yourself in the seat, in the shoes of the disciples for a minute. You're sitting there near the gates of Hades, and is there a problem with the computer, or is that, that's on the computer back there. Okay, we're good. There's a picture behind me, if you can look back there. All right, sorry. I was like, I don't know, that's not the gates of Hades, but it's a beautiful picture. Anyways, I digress. All right, here we are again. Ice picture, we're going. But Jesus says, to put his disciples there in the gates of Hades, place of despair. He says, I'm going to be the Christ. And not only am I going to be the Christ for Jerusalem and the box that you guys have put the Christ in, but I have become a Christ for the world. And the world is going to know the hope and the power and the joy and everything that I bring with who I am as the Christ. I am the Savior for the world. I mean, you've been following this Jesus, and his movement has been picking up serious momentum. I mean, thousands of people, crowds are gathering him, and you come to realize this rabbi, this teacher that has asked you to come follow him is indeed the Messiah. And he has personally picked you. He said to you, come follow me. You, a C student, an average person, no one special, no one above average, below, just you. Come and follow me. And the call of a rabbi was an invitation to come and do what the rabbi does. And so Jesus, this Messiah, comes to his disciples and says, you, come follow me. I want you to do what I do. Imagine how exciting that became for the disciples as they were following and watching Jesus do miracles and many amazing things. I'm following this rabbi. I'm following this Jesus. I get to do this? This is amazing. And now you're coming to the conclusion that this Jesus is the Messiah. Like, he's the promised one. Like, whoa, not only I lucked out. I mean, I am on I'm on the winning team. You picked the winning team. I mean, it couldn't get any better. And now Jesus is saying that his message is for the world, that his message is for the places of despair, and that even the gates of Hades aren't going to withstand it. Woohoo! This is going to be awesome. And we're all high-fiving each other, all five. He picked us. What's up? Chest bump, boom. Yeah. And then Jesus comes to you and says, you know what? Not only that, I'm going to make you be the ones to build my church. Awesome. But then right after that, this twist in the story, he begins teaching them that he is going to suffer, that he's going to be handed to the chief priests and elders and the scribes and be put to death. Wait a minute, Jesus. Did I miss something here? I mean, for a minute, I thought you just said you were going to build an everlasting kingdom. I'm a little confused here, but you just said you're going to suffer and die? I mean, not exactly the news I was expecting. I mean, maybe we're too loud with our high fives and everything, but I believe you just said that you're going to die. I mean, I can expect you to come and give us, okay, guys, this is how it's going to work. Everyone put your hands in. This is the plan. This is how we're going to take over the gates of Hades. This is how we're going to storm the world, and this is how we're going to build our kingdom, and it's going to be awesome, and we're going to be on top. Everybody, break! Let's go. But I don't think I heard that from you, Jesus. I believe I heard you say you're going to suffer and die. I mean, anything but this. Jesus said he would suffer, not just get hurt, not just endure pain, but he uses the word suffer at the hands of these men. Now, if I go to the dentist, I endure pain. I endure pain just thinking about when I have to go to the dentist next. I don't like the dentist, but when I'm at the dentist and there's that zzz going on and I'm like in pain, like I know there's an end in sight and I'm like, it's going to be over soon, it's going to be over soon, it's going to be over soon, and I know life is going to be okay and I'm going to have shiny pearly whites and it's going to be awesome. Well, maybe not, I don't know, my teeth aren't that awesome. But suffering is something different. Suffering is something that when you experience suffering, death begins to look like a better alternative. The word suffer implies with it a breaking of the spirit, leading to pain and despair. So much so that for centuries, when farmers have come across animals who suffer, they have felt like death was an act of mercy. I mean, death doesn't look like mercy. I mean, you're taking a life, right? But suffering is so bad that at a point when you see something suffering, you're just like, would you please just let this person go? And for some of us, we know what that looks like. For some of us, we've walked down that road with people that we love. We know that suffering is a horrible thing. And while we would never wish death on a person, suffering is so bad that sometimes we say that maybe right now this is a better alternative. And Jesus, our Messiah, the Christ, says, I am going to suffer at the hands of these men. Now, this is, and not only suffer, but I was going to die. Now, if I was a disciple at that time, I might be wondering, I mean, how do you plan on carrying this whole Messiah thing out if you're dead? How do you plan on ruling the world and establishing a kingdom if you aren't here? What are we going to do as your 12 amazing, awesome disciples going to do with you not being in the picture? Well, to which Jesus says, he's going to rise again. Excuse me? You're going to do what? I mean, Jesus, we've seen you do some amazing things, and at this point, we've seen you raise people from the dead, but raise yourself from the dead? This is a lot to swallow. And if we pause and we put ourselves at the feet of those disciples, I think it's a lot for us to swallow as well. But Peter steps in and he looks at Jesus, and look what it says. He rebukes him. Peter rebukes him, and that's pretty bold. I mean, just a minute ago, Peter was saying to Jesus, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. I mean, this is a title that people weren't given out very readily. The Jews took the term Messiah very seriously, and it's one that could be punishable by death if you're making yourself equal with God especially. And Jesus says, you are the Messiah, Son of the living God. He just gave out Jesus the top dog title. He says, now Jesus, I know you're at the top, and I know you're like the head chief, the top dog, the big man in charge, but he rebukes him. He says, it's like he says, Jesus, come here. Let me talk to you for a second. You're acting crazy. What are you doing? I mean, we got a good thing going here. You're going to be the Messiah. Your kingdom's going to reign forever. What are you talking about dying? Far be it from you, Lord. Peter says this is like the farthest thing of what it means for you to be our Lord. Farthest thing from what it means to be our Savior. This should not happen to you. And it's like just within the same breath, Peter forgets who he was talking to. And I feel like I've been there before. I could be in a church service. I could be worshiping God. I can raise my hands. I could read a Bible passage. I could do a Bible study. I can walk out of a small group. I could leave the high school ministry and watch students' lives come alive and say, Jesus, you're the Christ. You are awesome. You're doing amazing, amazing things. And I can, in one side of my life, affirm him for everything and say, my life is yours. I am at your mercy. I am following you, Jesus. But then when things get tough, when things get hard, when things don't go my way, sometimes I'm like, God, what are you thinking? Let me tell you how it should be. Let me tell you how it should go. Because I'm a little bit confused here. You're asking me to do something pretty difficult, and that thing that you want me to do, probably not exactly how you want me to do it. Let me think about it a little bit, God, and I'll get back to you. And all that time, I forget just who it is that I'm talking to. And Peter pulls him aside, forgetting who he is, and says, far be it from you. This isn't even close to what you're supposed to be about as the Christ. Jesus, I mean, I get that you're the Christ, but you're a little misunderstood. And with that, Jesus gives one of the harshest rebukes written in all of Scripture. And I'm not even sure there's even a harder rebuke that Jesus has ever given, or God for that matter, Jesus and God being the same, in all of Scripture. And he gives it to Peter. He says, get behind me, Satan. I don't know about you, but I want Jesus to say a lot of things about me. Calling me Satan is not one of them. No thanks. He says, you are a hindrance for me. That word hindrance also carries with it a stumbling block. Jesus just called Peter, gave him a new nickname, saying, you are a rock. I'm calling you Rocky, and on this rock I'm going to build this church. And now you're acting like a stumbling block. 3 rocks. You're acting like a stumbling block right now. You are a hindrance to me, for you're setting your sights on the things of man, but not the things of God. And why did Jesus go there? Why did he get so harsh? Well, first, Peter's words are so strikingly similar to the temptation that Jesus was given by Satan at the beginning of his ministry. You can find it in Matthew chapter 4. I think we have it on the slide, though, don't we? I'll read this to you real fast. This is Jesus when he was being tempted walking in the wilderness. And Satan, the devil, comes and tempts him to sort of play his God card, to sort of give in to Satan's temptations. And he says this, "Again, the devil took him at a very high mountain," kind of similar to where they are now in Mount Hermon. He says, "Take him to a high mountain. He showed them all the kingdoms of the world and their glory." Look at all this stuff, Jesus. Look at this whole world that is yours. And he said to him, "All these I," Satan, pretty bold of him to say, "will give you if you fall down and worship me." And then Jesus said to him, "Be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." I mean, in a sense, Peter was pulling him aside and offering him the same deal. And Jesus went on to say to Peter that he had the things of man, not mindset on the things of man, and not of God. Because what Peter wanted was a Savior without the suffering. Peter wanted a Christ without the crucifixion. He wanted a Christ that would come and fix everything and make life better for him. And it was the Christ that many of the Jews at that time had wanted, an overcoming Christ, one that was going to reestablish a reign, a kingdom there at that time. One that fit in his worldview, one that fit in his mindset, one that was comfortable for Peter, the one that Peter wanted. And if we're honest, it's sometimes the Jesus that we want too. I mean, we like the Jesus that heals. We like the Jesus that comforts us. We like the Jesus that forgives us. We like the Jesus who's here offering us an encouraging word. And we like the Jesus that welcomes home. And while Jesus does all those things, those aren't the reasons why Jesus came. While Jesus does offer us comfort, peace, grace, encouragement, these aren't the reason why he came. Because he came for something that was much bigger. All those things that we need, the reasons why we need hope, the reasons why we need to be healed, the reasons why we need to be encouraged, the reasons why we need to find hope so we don't need to endure, the reasons we need all those things are symptoms of something much bigger and much deeper. And the problem is sin. And the problem with sin isn't that it makes us bad. The problem with sin is that it makes us dead. It's not some sliding scale we could put ourselves on, but it's a condition that we are born with. And it's a condition of the human heart, and it leaves us separated from God. It leaves us dead in our tracks. And while we do in the scriptures find Jesus comforting people, healing people, and doing all those things, every single person that Jesus ministered to died. Think about it. Every person Jesus touched died. Every person that Jesus healed of leprosy died. Every person that Jesus healed to walk again is not walking around today because they died. Every person that heard Jesus teach, every person that felt a challenge from Jesus eventually died. And if all Jesus came for was to offer us encouragement or hope or some kind of a nice word to get us through maybe an encouraging study, then the same fate is left for everyone else. And all we're doing here is looking for something to encourage us to get us by in this life until eventually the same fate finds us all, that we die. Jesus came for something much bigger, and so Jesus pulls Peter aside really quickly. And he says, "Get behind me, Satan. If you want to know what I'm about, if you want to know what the Christ is about, if you want to know what the Savior is about, if you want to know what the Messiah is about, if you want to know what the full weight of it means for me to be called Son of God, the Messiah, then it has to do with my suffering and my death. Because the whole world is about who's who knows who, what's what, who's in and who's out, who's getting to the top, who's good enough, who's bad enough. Everyone's got a different opinion about how to save this world. Everyone's got a different idea, and they're so quick to want to put it over everybody else. But if you want to know what I've come for, it's not some temporary reign, but I have come for the cross. Because I haven't come just to put a Band-Aid on the world. I haven't come for some temporary reign in this world. I have come for the world's biggest problem. And the good news, that is exactly what Jesus did. And he did it by suffering. And he did it by dying for us on a cross. And then making a way for us by defeating death itself, by rising again on the third day. And all this is an act of radical grace. And sometimes we have a hard time with the suffering side of the Savior. Like, we read about it, we know Jesus suffered, but sometimes we don't sit there very long because it's uneasy and it makes it uncomfortable, because I don't want to be the one to admit that that's part of that problem up there on that cross was me. And he was doing it for me. I don't like to think that Jesus had to do that stuff for me. I like to think it was for everybody else. But the problem is just as much as me as it is in everybody else. And Jesus goes and does that. And Jesus' suffering confronts that side of me and says that I need that to be for me as well. And the amazing act of God's grace is he did it for me. He did it for all of us before we asked for it. It was an act of radical grace. And Jesus' radical grace calls for extravagant and radical response to living for him. I mean, if you think about it, because if that grace that Jesus did for us isn't amazing, then our response doesn't have to be that amazing. It shouldn't be that amazing. But if it is as good as we say it is as good as we believe it to be, then our life's response should reflect the same measure of gratitude, joy, freedom, victory, hope that we received by this one that we call Savior. And so what should our response be to this Jesus? What should our response then be to this one who's given us everything? Jesus then said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow me. Jesus said that he's put everything on the line for us. He's given up his life for us, and in return, he asks us to go all in. And when I talk with my friends, it's really easy to talk about the God, especially the side of Jesus as a moral teacher. We talked about that last week. It's really easy to kind of talk about Jesus as a good man, a good teacher, all these different things that we know about Jesus as a historical person. But when the topic comes up about Jesus asking everything of us, sometimes we get a little uneasy. I mean, sometimes we even feel bothered that Jesus would ask anything of us. We like the Jesus that we can kind of manipulate to make our circumstances work, but then Jesus asking something of us can sometimes make us uncomfortable. But if you think about it, everything in life asks something of us. And a lot of times we accept it without little thought. I mean, what coach is going to burst into the locker room and be like, all right, everybody, we got ourselves a good game today. We got a real tough team out there. They're big and they're gnarly and they are huge. And this game, everything is riding on this game, guys. This is game time. It's time to make your mamas proud. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is huddle up, put your hands in. I want you to just give half of yourselves out there today. Half of yourselves. Now, I know you got a lot in your minds, you got a lot on your plate, and this is a big game. I just want at least half of your concentration on that field today. Just half. Just half. That's all I'm asking for. I think we can do it. You guys ready for it? Let's do it. Break. No, I mean, that coach will be fired, right? Because the coach expects everything of us when we're out there in the game. Or what marriage ceremony will we go to and say, I give myself half to you. Wife, Michelle, I give half of my heart to you. And what wife would say, you know what? Thank you. Because I know there's a lot of other fish in the sea, and there's a lot of other people out there, and work and demands and stuff. I mean, you got a lot on your plate, but if you just give half of yourself to me, I'll take it. No, I mean, it's foolish. It would be foolish for any of us to expect anything less than all of ourselves for our spouse. And so they ask things of us. But think about it, everything else expects stuff of us. Our lifestyle expects things of us. Our houses expect things of us. Money doesn't grow on trees. Got to work for things and got to pay for our home, pay for our apartment, pay for our place, our car. Everything expects time and energy from us. Even the friends we choose ask something from us to keep them. And that's the positive list. I mean, those are the good things in life, and it's good for good things. I mean, everything just asks something from us. But think about the things that so many of us are willing to give up for just a quick thing, like a quick fix or a quick high. Things we give up for fame or recognition or advancement or reputation. Think of what people are willing to give up for relationships. The relationships with their wife and their children and their family and their lifestyles all for a quick affair. Think of the destruction and damage in relationships we are willing to have for a quick burst of anger or rage, just because that quick fix we get. And how much are people willing to sacrifice for their career or job? I mean, after years of school and hours and hours away from home for our job, just for advancement, and the list goes on. I mean, everything asks something for us, and yet Jesus asks something for us. Sometimes we get uneasy. We feel like intruded upon. We feel like our toes are stepped on. And Jesus goes on to say, what good is it for a man if you gain the whole world and yet forfeit your soul? As if we can get all that and maybe even get by and even get by with some of it, and the whole time sell everything we have, give up what we were created for those things. As if Jesus is saying all those things are demanding of your soul, and none of them will treat you for what your soul is even worth. Have you ever made a bad trade before? Have you ever gone somewhere and thought you had something, work things out? Anyone ever bought anything on eBay, and after it showed up, you're like, oh, I know this isn't what I thought it was. You had the bid and you get it. Sometimes we make a bad trade. My son came home one time from school, and he was a little bit bummed, and he had with him a Pokemon card. This isn't the actual card. I know my son would correct me if I told him it was this card. But he came home, and he was kind of bummed because he made a bad trade with his friend on the bus. A friend knew the game better than he did at that time, and better than my son did, and he made a trade. And so he enticed Thomas with a card that was shiny, a card that looked cool, but a card that was worth little and was very common and not good for the game. And later when my son found out what the card was worth when he gave it away, he was discouraged. And he was even more discouraged to find out that his friend did this again to him. And yet every day we're enticed to make bad trades. Every day we're expected and asked to settle for less than what our souls are worth. We give up everything for life's demands and pulls, and after all is said and done, sometimes we're left feeling like we made a bad trade. Because all of those things ask something of you first before they give to you in return. You trade to me, and I'll give you what you're looking for. You give something up for me, and I'll give you what you're looking for. But Jesus is the only one who's given us everything first before he asks us to make a trade. Jesus makes the trade first. And the good news is, we're the ones who trade up. The good news is, he gave his life in trade for ours. He is the only one that has shown us what our worth is. He's the only one who's proven to us that we are worth something by redeeming us and buying us back with his very life. Jesus knows what you are worth. Jesus knows what every one of us are worth in this room. And right now where you're sitting, he knows what you're worth. Right now with our junk, even the things that we brought here today, the ups and the downs, for those of us that have been following Jesus for a long time, to those of us who are here for the first time, Jesus knows what you're worth. And we can hold all that in the balance and say, this is not a good trade. But Jesus says, yes, it is. Because you're worth something to me. And I'm going to show you how much you're worth because I'm going to give my very life for you. Jesus could not have paid a higher price for you. And he gives that for us. And so Jesus, what he asks of us by denying ourselves, picking up our cross, losing our life to him, isn't really all that shocking. Because for Jesus, the stakes are too high for half-hearted commitment. For Jesus, he knows that he doesn't want us to settle for anything less than the best life that he is offering us. So if you want to be my disciple, if you want to know what this whole life is about, if you really want to know what worth and things that really matter in this life are out, go all in. If anyone would come after me, this is the same language that a rabbi would have used, calling their disciples, come after me, or come follow me. That is why sometimes this passage is translated, if anyone wants to be my disciple. And Jesus doesn't limit this call to coming and dying ourselves to the 12, because he says, if anyone, this is a call for all of us. But then he says a word that's pretty tough. He says, then anyone who wants to come follow me must. That's an imperative. No getting around it. If anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Last week as we left, we put pins on a map. And for some of those of you shared with me that you didn't have time to get to the map because of the line. And so I would encourage you before you leave today to pick up a pin, find where you live on that map, put a pin down. Find a place in that map where there's someone in your life that you want to touch or minister to. Find where they live. Put a pin down there. Find a pin where you work and put it down there and say, these are the places that I want to be a light for God's kingdom. These are the places that I want to establish a new way of living and show a new way of living to those around me. Proclaiming Christ is the first step. But then Jesus tells us if we want to build his kingdom, it comes by dying. Now, Jesus later said that there's a time coming where I'm going to come with all my angels, quoting from the Psalms. I'm going to come in all my glory, and it's going to be said, and it's going to be done. But Jesus established his kingdom first by coming, serving, and dying. And if we want to make any impact on this world, if we want to do anything and see that kingdom established and take root in hard places, we have got to be willing to go and do the same, deny ourselves, pick up our cross, and follow him. And those words, those phrases are unpopular in this time of history, especially now. I mean, we live in a world that caters to our fingertips. I mean, literally to our fingertips. We've got phones that we touch and do everything at our commands. We've got iPads and other tablets of all sorts of things, and we are mesmerized by the glowing screen that then plays Netflix and all sorts of cool things for us to watch and glow. And the whole time, we have this world of entertainment, this world of news, this world of sports. We can cater our entire experience at our very fingertips. And we can text and communicate with people so fast. As soon as I want someone to know that I'm thinking of them or I want them to do something, I can send a text immediately and they will get it. Because this is my world and I am in charge and this world caters to me. And I will send my text because it is important and it will interrupt their day, but they will stop what they are doing because texting is cool. And they will respond to me. And yet sometimes I'll send a text and it's like that little line says sending, stop. And I'm like, oh, this is taking forever. Why won't this thing send? Come on, phone. It's going to space. And it's going to another person somewhere else in the world. Give it a second. It's amazing technology, right? And yet we can feel like all these things somehow they owe us something, that we're in charge. We get food our way. We get all sorts of stuff our way. And we can make the false assumption that the world revolves around me, when it clearly does not. And one thing I've noticed over the years of living in this entertainment-driven, me at my fingertips life is that we can really feel like we're doing a lot of things without really doing anything at all. I mean, think about that for a minute. We can feel like we're doing a lot of things and making a lot of changes without doing anything at all. I can spend my entire day on Facebook feeling like I'm connected with friends and still have no close friends and still feel entirely alone. I could spend all day at work and appear like I'm getting a lot of things done and really never really get anything done, get very little done. I can click the like button and read up on lots of causes that I can find in the news. And I can make it feel like I'm a part of all these big causes because I have all these likes on my Facebook page. I have all these things that I've said I'm a part of. I've got all this literature and these pamphlets, and I feel like I'm a part of something. And the whole time, we don't have to lift a finger. When it comes to changes in my life, I could feel moved. I can even be brought to tears in a movie or a documentary. Anyone ever cry in a movie? Anyone? Ah, I'm such a weepy guy. I don't know, especially as I get older, I cry a whole lot more in movies. And I don't know, we just watched Wreck-It Ralph with my kids yesterday. We're all homesick, and it's a cartoon, and it's the end, and I'm like, you can fix it. You do it. It's okay to be bad, and that's good. I was just like, whatever. I was just like, oh, whatever it is. But I was weepy over this stinking movie. But I can feel moved internally, like something is gonna change and never make any change in my life. I could watch a documentary about real life issues and real life problems, and I could feel moved in my heart. And I could feel like that movement is doing something in me, but if I'm honest, it's just entertainment. It's just making me feel something that I long to feel, because I want to feel like I'm connected to something bigger than myself. I want to feel like I'm a part of something. I just don't know how to be a part of something. So when I watch these movies, I'm like, yeah, that's it, right on, amen, I feel good. Or I can come to a church service and I can feel totally moved and convicted to do something with my life and leave being like, man, that service wrecked me. I feel like I'm going to do something. And I can order my sandwich and go on with my day and feel like I've changed when really nothing has changed in my life. We can fool ourselves to feel like just because we hear a convicting sermon or we feel moved by God's word that something is changing. But when Jesus says deny yourselves, he's not just asking you to deny yourself in your heart. He's asking for a response for your life. When he says pick up your cross and follow me, that includes action. Pick up your cross is a verb. And then he says follow me. That is a verb. But sometimes we kind of say things like, well, I'm following him in my heart, which is okay, which is good. We want it to start with our heart. But if it doesn't lead to action, then we're missing out on why Jesus has taught us these things, why he's asking us to be his light in this world, why he's asking us, why he's trusting the church to make a big splash and impact in the world. Because he's expecting us, as we hear these things, that it would lead to action. Francis Chan shares a story, and it really stuck out with me. Is if I were to ask my son or my daughter to go clean their room, I'd say, guys, your room is a mess. Go, please, and clean your room. And they're up there for a while, and they come down, and Thomas says, Dad, I did it. What'd you do? Did you clean your room, buddy? No, I memorized what you said. You said, your room is a mess. Go upstairs and clean your room. Please, you said please go upstairs and clean your room. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you took what I said to heart, but please go upstairs and clean your room. Seriously, it's a mess. I need you to clean it. So he goes up there, a couple more hours come by, and him and Sophia come down, and they're like, Dad, this is awesome. I'm like, what's awesome? It's like, well, we invited some friends over, and we brought them upstairs, and we didn't play, but instead we sat around and we talked about what you said. We talked about what you said when you said your room is a mess, and we explored the room, and we're like, you're right, that's out of place, and that's out of place, and this is a mess, and I should have picked up my cards, and boy, is that dusty. And we explored about how messy the room was, but then we dreamed together. We thought, what would it look like if we really cleaned this room? And we're so excited about how clean this room is going to be. It's going to be amazing. Well, that's great. That's awesome. Did you clean the room? No. No, we didn't. Jesus isn't looking for us to have a convicting message and go home and have the next week be the same. Jesus isn't looking for us to study the word in such a way that we can say, Jesus, aren't you proud of me? I know the Greek. I can parse the verbs. I know the Hebrew. I know the original language. I even studied the context and the history. It's pretty amazing stuff you got there, Jesus. And Jesus says, that's great. I'm glad you studied it. But what are you doing with this word that I give you? Jesus says, if you want to follow me, it's a posture of the heart, and it leads to actions. Deny yourself. I mean, setting aside our agenda, our will, our goal, and saying, if we're honest with ourselves, God, there's a lot of me that controls me. There's a lot of me that wants me to be in charge. And putting you in charge makes me a little uneasy. But Jesus says, deny yourself. Put my glory up first. Now, Jesus doesn't ask us to do anything that he didn't do for us first. Jesus came and he walked and he lived for the Father's glory step by step. Jesus said, anything I've said, everything I've done is because my Father has asked me to do it. Now, I am showing you the way to do this. Live for my Father's glory. Obey what my Father says. Do what my Father is asking you to do. I'll enable you to do this. Go and do it. Denying ourselves means saying, it's not my story, but it's your story. I want you to be God of my life. I want you to actually be in charge, not just the God that I've invited into my heart, but the God who's really in charge of everything that I do. I want everything I do to speak to your glory and about what you are. Jesus said, pick up your cross, and every Jewish man or woman in Palestine would have known what that cross was, and that cross was a death sentence. I mean, the cross was a brutal, horrible way to die. I mean, it was as if, and there's different ways about how the cross came about, but in short, it was almost as if the roman Empire said, we're going to have a contest with our people to say, what's the most brutal way you could think of to kill somebody and execute them? And they had all these things to look at and review, and someone said, there's the cross, ding, 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 that's our winner. That is the horrible, shameful way we're going to kill people to show people our reign and our tyranny in this world. And Jesus said, if you want to follow me, pick up that cross. But for us and for the disciples, we later discovered that cross means something a whole lot different. That cross is something that we pick up willingly. No one would have willingly picked up a cross and put it on their shoulders. That would have been terrible. I mean, it'd be glutton for punishment to do such a thing. But now we know as disciples, we know as his followers, that cross represents something different. That cross represents redemption. That cross represents change. That cross represents new life and new purpose and new hope. And Jesus says, if you want to be about what I'm about, then pick up the cross. Be about the same things that I'm about, and serve and give yourself to the world around us. But I want to be clear for just a moment that denying ourselves is not being an emotional punching bag for other people. Denying ourselves is not being walked on by other people around us. And I think there are some people, and I've talked with some of us, and I've been there as well, I hear this message of Jesus, deny yourselves. And so then I start to think, well, everyone's asking something of me, and so I need to go do what everyone's asking me, because I'm supposed to be here to serve everyone that has a need. And so I start to feel torn in a lot of ways, and I start to feel like I'm heaping on all this guilt of all the ways I'm not denying myself to give to all these needs and other people around me. And I start to feel weighted, and I feel discouraged, and I feel like I've been an emotional punching bag, an emotional doormat for people to walk on and lead me to all the different places. Jesus is not asking us to be an emotional doormat. He's not asking us to just be an emotional punching bag for other people, because you got to deny yourself. Jesus is our example. And Jesus lived for the glory and the will of the Father first. And when he picked up that cross, for those of us that know the reference, it's for the joy set before Jesus that he endured that cross. It was for the joy set before him. It was for the things and the outcome of that cross that he knew what that cross was going to accomplish for us, that he endured that cross. And when we pick up the cross to follow Jesus, we are saying, Jesus, I am making your will first. And sometimes, if we're honest, we're living for the will of everybody else and not the will of our Father. And sometimes there's things that we're doing for other people that we need to stop because it's keeping us from giving ourselves fully to the things that God is asking us to do somewhere else. And if we're going to pick up that cross, we need to have a firm resolve, not a punching bag, not a doormat, not someone who's beaten. Jesus willingly did that with a firm resolve for what it was going to accomplish for the world and for us. In the same way, when we pick up that cross to follow Jesus, we have a firm resolve saying, Jesus, I am denying myself. I am giving myself to you for your glory, for what you're going to accomplish, for what you're going to do and establish that will last forever. Every great person in history that has ever made a lasting impact, for good or for bad, believer or not, has given their life for what they believe in. They've given their time, their energy, their stuff. Our son's studying Madame Curie for all she's done with her research and Nobel Prizes, and she gave her life to her studies. Every great person in history that's ever done anything or accomplished something has done so by giving and pouring their lives into something of what they believe in. Jesus' request of us is no different. But the difference in Jesus' request, he says, what you do with me and what you do by giving yourself to my cause is that not only is what you're going to do last now and make a difference for humanity, it's going to last forever. And then there's a day that I am coming back and I will reward those for what they have done. Now, this isn't that we earn works or we earn salvation. That's not what this message is about. But that Jesus says that eternity and my presence and my kingdom is far more a reward when I come than all the other things that you could pour and give your lives to. Jesus says, will you give your life to following me? Will you go all in? Jesus is asking of this kind of life for us. Some of us put pins down in some pretty hard places. And there are times that being a follower of Jesus Christ is not going to make us popular. It's not going to make it easy. It's not going to make it fun. It's not going to be nice. There's times where we have desires in our own flesh that we have to kind of say, you know what, I'm putting this aside. Even in our own sinful desires, we have to say, okay, this sin that I'm living for is the reason that Jesus died, and I'm going to deny myself the pleasure of this momentary sin to live for an eternal God. I'm going to deny myself. I'm going to pick up my cross. Instead of doing these things, I'm going to pick up my cross and serve the world around me and make an impact for God and for his glory, for his story. I'm going to make him known. Jesus is asking for an all-in kind of life. So this morning I want to close by asking you, where are you at with your life? Where are you at with this teaching of Jesus and him saying, if you want to be my disciple, and our hope is that all of us, we would grow to be his disciple. He says, deny yourself, pick up your cross and follow me. Now the good news is, this is the good news, is that Jesus, all his disciples, didn't quite understand it. The pastor says he began teaching them these things, and he began teaching them things over and over and over again. And even all the way up to the cross, they didn't fully get it. And even all the way up to the cross, they didn't fully understand what it meant that Jesus was going to do these things. So it wasn't like Jesus just gave this message, bing, the light bulb went off, and they were ready to go and do this thing full-heartedly. No, because when the cross came, they all fled, they all scattered, they all ran away. But something happened because the cross didn't keep Jesus dead. The grave didn't hold Jesus down. Jesus rose again. And when they encountered that resurrected, living, victorious Christ, things changed in their lives. And so there are places in our lives that we need to connect with that same victorious and resurrected Jesus before we can begin doing the same. And if that's not you this morning, don't add more things for the sake of trying to make God happier, because it's backwards. Jesus says, encounter me. Let me encounter you. Experience my death and resurrection for you. And then as we do, we begin to want to say there's nothing else better to live for. There's nothing else better to do with our time and our life here on earth than to live for your glory. So I'm going to deny the short-term things in my life, pick up my cross and serve the world and follow you. And that's what we're called to do. Close with this video. We showed it at our winter camp, and it was pretty impactful for me. But we know that Marines are given a huge call. And a Marine can't just decide after they've answered the call that it's a good day to be a Marine. Like, well, it's a good day because there's nothing is fighting, or there's peacetime, or it's really fun because the weather is nice. Oh, things are getting bad? I'm not going to go out there. It's like, I would fight, but you know what? It's a rainy day, and I don't fight in the rain. It's kind of a whole thing. It messes my hair, and it's just not a good thing. That would be nonsense, because a Marine, when they've given their call to serve for something bigger, they've said, my life is about something bigger. And when hard times and difficulties come, they run into that difficult times, and they serve. Pete, would you show the video?
There are a few who move toward the sounds of chaos, ready to respond at a moment's notice. And when the time comes, they are the first to move toward the sounds of tyranny, injustice, and despair. They are forged in the crucible of training. They are the few, the proud, the Marines.
Now, I love that image. The sound of chaos comes. Which way are you running? I mean, there is a whole firestorm in front, and while people might be running out to get away from that scene, the Marines look at that and say, that's a place I'm going to run, because they've died to themselves and are living for a bigger story. In the same way, when we have given our life and put our trust in Jesus Christ, when we put our pins down in that map, we say there is a tough situation, there is something that is difficult, but I'm not going to run the other way. I'm going to run into that, because I know there is a Savior who says that what I do here matters, and that when I live for the cross and when I live for His glory, God establishes His kingdom, and people's heads turn, and they can praise and glorify our Father in heaven. That's what we're called to do. We're called to run into the firestorm and say, this is where we're going. But we're only going to be able to do that. We're only going to be able to make that kind of impact once we say, okay, Jesus, I'm living for you. I'm denying myself. I'm picking up your cross and following you. I was so humbled last week as we talked to people, even throughout the week, as we gave the message, that people coming up saying they felt led to go speak and minister to people in prison. Another person sharing how the story of human trafficking has really gripped her heart, and she wants to go make a difference there. Another person sharing how they felt like they needed to go into a local bar because it's down the way from them, and they know people there, and they want to start to be a light in that community, but it's a tough place. Talked with another young man who said that one of his coworkers had taken his life, and his whole crew is just in despair. And he realized that now, day after day, he passed that bar of where that friend was, and he knows now that he needs to start going in their friends' lives and making a difference and shining for Christ. When we set aside our agendas and we look at the world and the needs around us and say, Christ, where can I serve? Where can I go? How can I impact this world for you? God does things, but it happens when we say, Jesus, your life was for me, and I trade up. I trade up because I get your life. Now there's nothing more that I want than to respond with extravagant worship to you by serving, picking up my cross, and following you. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you for your word. Thank you for your hard call on our lives. And as we go to the places that you're sending us, will we go knowing first what you have done for us? Will we know going first what you have provided for us? And as we get to know your extravagant, radical, amazing grace for us, would you transform our hearts? Would you give us a firm resolve to set all the things of ourselves aside and live for you, for your kingdom? And God, would the Palos Heights, Chicago area know you are a risen and amazing and serving God by the ways that we live as your disciples. In Jesus' name, amen.